Hiya, I'm Katie. I'm one of the lead artists on the plugin project, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the Arts Award, and in particular the D section of the Arts Award. That's the Arts Skill section. So this is where you share a skill that you have, one of your artistic skills that perhaps you've already had for a long time, or maybe it's something that you've developed through doing the project. And I think this is a particularly good section of the Arts Award because I'm a teacher as well. I teach this instrument, the clarinet. And I think that teaching is an amazing way to consolidate your knowledge. And it really helps you develop a lot of different skills. So through teaching, I've learned how to sort of break things down into smaller chunks, how to communicate new ideas to people in more creative ways. It sort of opened my mind creatively. And it's helped teach me how to learn as well, because when you have to break something down for someone, you start to analyse the learning process. So now when I try to learn new things, I find that I can refer back to different ideas. And teaching is a real buzz, actually, when you feel like you've passed on some information to someone else that they might enjoy using in the future, and perhaps it's something that will stay with them for the rest of their life. That is really exciting. Okay, so the first thing you need to do for the Arts Award for this section then is to think about what it is that you would like to share. What is it going to be that you're going to share, and why would you like to share this? So obviously for me, if I was going to be doing this, I wouldn't just be playing my clarinet and doing a concert. It's not about sort of showing off the skills that you've got. This section is about sharing them and about helping others and nurturing their learning through this process. So obviously you need to think about how that applies to the thing that you'd like to do. So I think of this of the Arts Award, really, this section as kind of having three mini sections in one. So the first section is your planning. Part one is planning. Part two is recording how you did it, and part three is reviewing that process. So part one, planning. You've decided what you're going to do, but how are you going to do it now? So when I teach my clarinet, sometimes that's in group lessons, sometimes that's one-to-one, and sometimes it's a workshop with lots of people in it. So obviously that depends on what you're going to be doing for your activity. Perhaps you could run a club, an arts club, or a workshop. You could do a presentation with questions and answers. You could even make a how-to video or a podcast for a student to watch or listen to. You could make a tutorial worksheet. So there's lots of different ways, and you might come up with some more creative ways as well. Okay, number two, what do you need to get ready? So do you need to make a written plan that you can refer to if you get stuck? Do you need to check the space that you'll be using is big enough if you're doing it with a group? If you're making a video, do you need to check that the camera has enough space, that the setting has good lighting? Do you need to check that your participants are allowed to be filmed? And do you need to get permission from them, perhaps? Do you need any extra materials for your workshop or your lesson? When I teach, I have to check the room I'm in is clean, make sure I have a music stand and any extra materials. And one thing I think is really important to do is always make sure that I have some extra activities just in case that we finish what we're working on. So number three, how are you going to make it fun? So have a think about the ways that you can make it more enjoyable. Are there any games that you can incorporate into your activity? If you're working with a group, can you think of any team games to do? Do the people know each other already? Can you think of any icebreaker activities? If you are sharing your skill on a more one-to-one basis, how can you make sure that the other person isn't too nervous? Maybe you want to think about the setup of the room a little bit. And how can you make sure that the activity isn't too difficult for a beginner? Is there anything that you can do to make sure your participant or your student is comfortable and at ease as soon as they come in your room? Okay, number 4, how will you know if you've been successful or not? Now, I think this is a kind of tricky one because sometimes it's very obvious to see if you've been successful when you've shared some information or you've taught, but sometimes it's not clear at all. So maybe your activity is one where it's going to be easy for someone to demonstrate what they've learnt at the end, or perhaps you can ask your participant to show someone else what you've taught them if you're doing this in a group. But it might be difficult to pin that kind of thing down straight away because maybe your skill would take a long time for the participant to learn and there won't necessarily be a sort of tangible outcome that you can see straight away. And if that is the case, then don't worry. We all know that learning is a really long process. Maybe you could always ask your participants or your students to give you some feedback. You could make a kind of feedback form, or people could perhaps leave some voice clips for you at the end of the session saying what they liked and what they think worked. Okay, so now we're on to part 2. So part 2 of this this section of the Arts Award is to do it. So firstly, you want to actually record how you did it. Maybe just you could write it down or share any photos that you took with permission, of course, from the people that were there. And maybe you could think of some other creative ways for recording how you actually managed to do your activity. So part 3 is to review it. So 1, what went well? Is there anything that you thought went particularly well? Did it go to plan? Even if it didn't go to plan, then with the Arts Award, just write that down. This part of the Arts Award is definitely not a test to find out if the people that you've shared your skill with have mastered your activity. This part is about the process that you've gone through to help them learn, and that's all you need to write down or record in the way that you'd like to. Okay, number 3, is there anything you'd do differently if you could do it again? And number 4, what did your participants think? So we've talked a bit about this already, so maybe you could even just hold a discussion afterwards and record what people say. Or perhaps you might want to make a feedback card which you could put on every seat to be given in at the end. So if you try to answer all of the questions that I've just asked now, you will easily have enough information to complete this section for your award. And I hope that you found this video helpful and that you can use the skills that you've learned in teaching and sharing with others, not just in your Arts Award, but in other areas of your life too. Okay, thanks very much. Bye.